Hello, this is Jarrett, and welcome to the first week in a series of devotionals put together by the Leprosy Mission. Wherever and whenever you're listening, I encourage you to join us each week as we explore some reassuring messages from the Bible. Today is the final week of March, and as I look outside the window, the sun is gloriously shining. If you are listening this week, chances are you are seeing the same clear skies as I am. We may be stuck in our homes, but at least we can let the light in. And if you are following us each week, let us know what you think. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or on our website. Email, tweet, comment, or telephone. We would love to hear from you. So let's take a few minutes out of our day to reflect. Our reflection this week looks at Ezekiel 37, the Valley of the Dry Bones, and John 11, the raising of Lazarus. Over the past 2 weeks, I've observed the machinery of our modern world coming to a slow halt. The clicks and zooms of cars have evaporated. The yawning gaps between airplanes flying overhead in the morning have widened, and bustling streets have been vacated, as though we were releasing them back into nature. And as the city's inhabitants creep into exile, what we leave behind is an increasingly soundless, lifeless world. Our former lives, for now, on hold, and the future, uncertain. When Ezekiel is given the prophecy in the Valley of the Dry Bones, the Jews would have been living for decades in this kind of exile, albeit in a much worse situation. The Jewish kingdom had recently been invaded by the Neo-Babylonian Empire. They were forced to swear allegiance to the emperor Nebuchadnezzar II and live under its laws, which may have included worshipping the moon god Sin. Ezekiel himself was among the many Judeans forced into captivity by the Babylonians. Later, the Jewish temple was destroyed, and the Jews were deported from Jerusalem to Babylon. It was the ancient Mesopotamian equivalent of ethnic cleansing. When Ezekiel prophesied that Israel would be restored to the land the Lord had given them, this promise would have seemed impossible in light of Israel's present condition. The nation of Israel was swiftly nearing its demise. Even if dry bones were to come back to life, there would be no temple, no infrastructure, no land, no sustainable future in sight. Believing the promises of God in these challenging circumstances would have been difficult. The same can be said for the friends and family of Lazarus. We learn that Mary, the one who poured priceless perfume on Jesus' feet, has a brother in Bethany who is critically ill. When Jesus receives the message, he does not immediately arise and travel to them. Instead, he says, confidently, this sickness will not end in death. And he stays there for 2 days. The question we are left with is, why does Jesus delay? If one of us telephoned to the NHS to tell them we had serious respiratory conditions and showed symptoms of COVID-19, and someone casually responded, this sickness will not end in death, but it is for God's glory so that Jesus may be glorified through it, would we be satisfied with this response? Why then does Jesus not go to Lazarus immediately? Let's look at the reasons Jesus offers. Jesus told the disciples that he waited so that they may believe. And he told Martha that he waited so she could learn to trust him as the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Fair enough, but why 4 days? The answer to this one requires further study. Ancient Jewish texts reveal an important belief held by the Jews who were waiting at the tomb of Lazarus. The Jews of this time period believed that until 3 days after death, the soul keeps on returning to the grave, thinking that it will go back into the body. But when it sees that the facial features have become disfigured, it departs and abandons it. Jesus waited until all hope was lost for those waiting for death's confirmation. Only then did Jesus raise Lazarus, and the result was stunning amongst Jews who held these primary beliefs about death and the soul. The text says, "Therefore many of the Jews," and maybe here we're talking the same Jews who were intent on stoning Jesus, many of the Jews put their faith in him. Okay, the waiting for 2 days, the 4 days in the tomb, the absence of Jesus at the time he declares Lazarus' condition will not end in death, the prophecy of the dry bones at a time when the Jewish nation is facing certain extinction. The point Ezekiel and John want their readers to derive from all these elaborations is for us to see clearly that with God, nothing is impossible. When I visited Nepal in November last year, I met a woman called Mita, who had suffered immensely over the years due to her leprosy. She had experienced rejection, separation from her family, endured the loss of a spouse who abandoned her, and was still living in a damaged home as a result of the earthquake in 2015. And yet, Mita was emphatic about the love she has received from the leprosy mission. Mita may still bear the scars of her leprosy, but she is now living a renewed life, even in the midst of her greatest darkness. Ezekiel left no doubt to the reader as to why the Spirit of the Lord might choose to whisk him to the valley of the dry bones. He was taken to a place of extremes, a place where there is no life, not a single sign of it. And it is here, in this place of death, where God brings life to those dry bones, standing on their feet as a vast army. Similarly, the raising of Lazarus occurs at a time when all hope was lost. In both stories, we are being set a scene where there is no hope, no life, no power, in order to be shown that with God there is hope, life, and power, even to resurrection. May we too, in this uncertain time, tread this valley with confidence, knowing that power of renewed life made available through Jesus Christ. And may we continue to renew, day by day, our commitments and fellowship to one another, being part of his body here on earth.